Oh, whoa!
You ever see one of those
I've never played
guitars?
one of those.
Oh, they're amazing. So it literally looks like a Strat. Okay, it has a Strat neck, like the actual Strat neck. The
Mm-hmm.
body is a Stratocaster that's basically like an acoustic body. So it's hollow. It's got a
Mm-hmm.
piezo pickup in it. All these different electronic things on it. It's really thin. Like the body's probably like that thin,
Yeah.
2 to 3 inches in depth, and it's not the most full guitar you want to play with, but it's still a Stratocaster that's acoustic and you can plug it in. And yeah, I used to take that on all the jobs. It was really cool.
So does it feel like? Does it play like an electric Stratocaster?
Yes, but with acoustic strings.
Huh.
So I used to put elixirs on them because I used to love the elixir strings when I used to play a lot of acoustic because they tonally they're just richer and you can bang them around for a couple of months without having to change them.
Mm-hmm.
And they got that polymer coating on them from what I remember. But yeah, it basically is an acoustic sound, but it's a Stratocaster feel. So you can do like soloing and bend it, and
Yeah.
I spent like a
Wow.
10 gauge on them, and I would go out and play these jobs. And so if they wanted to like hear Eric Clapton or something, I could do that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. You couldn't do like the David Gilmour bend because
Yeah.
that guy uses eights and he bends like 2.5 steps up.
Yeah.
And I would always pop strings, but there he is.
That's huge though. I've spent a lot of time looking for I really was looking for an acoustic that could play as an electric, and Taylor's put out a new one recently. And I finally just decided that the ES335 was my
I
one.
had a 335. I love them. Love them. Love them. Love them. Love them.
Beautiful instrument.
Yeah, it really is for jazz. That's why, one of the reasons why I got the Kiesel was
Mhm.
because it's a chambered body. So when
Mhm.
Holdsworth designed it, he designed these two, aortic chambers that were in there and to kind of really resonate like a jazz guitar. So I know we're doing band stuff today. I want to share with you guys really quickly. So I listened to an amazing album yesterday. Okay. So I'm walking through this grocery store thing we went to a couple of days ago, and I hear this track playing over the PA. Sometimes they, kind of rotate musical things from Sirius or whatever that the thing is. And I heard this track that I heard when I was like 22. Remember that song, Where Have the Cowboys Gone? Or I don't forget what the title is. The artist's name was Paula Cole. Remember her?
I know
She was
the
like
name
really
Paula Cole.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I remember that tune, right? So I went back and I pulled the album, right? And the album was called This Fire. And I listened to the whole thing front to back. What a good record. I mean, she was the one that was doing like, they pulled a couple of her songs for like Dawson's Creek. That's how old we're going. That's how far back we're going, right, into the show. So I wasn't really into the poppy stuff, but if you dig really deep into some of the material, but the band, like the band, the writing, I was just sitting back thinking like, my God, like some of these writers, really have their arms around the whole process. I mean, so listen to that album. Tell me what you guys think of it. I mean, lyrically speaking, yeah, I'm not 20 anymore. So I'm not into like the whole angst. I got to be independent and like, throw society away and just find my own kind of thing. But just, I think the way compositionally the whole record came together was like, wow, good stuff. And she was a Berkeley student too.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
This Fire. Yeah. Good record.
Oh, cool. I know the name. I just can't remember exactly.
Yeah, she's still active. I looked her up on the net. She's still doing gigs and still writing. I think she had like 7 albums since that one. So the industry, kind of pushed her out because I think it was more like a one and done record kind of thing. She had a couple of hits, but then still active, still playing, still writing.
Very cool. I listened to that band that you mentioned maybe a podcast or two ago. The 4 guys doing like a metal Pink Floyd-y type thing.
Red Fang.
Yeah.
Aren't they great? Their videos are even better.
Videos hilarious. So good. So good.
I think it was in a Prehistoric Dog when they're sitting around drinking beer and they're watching the guys play Dungeons and Dragons or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Gandalf.
Yeah. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
Oh, they're good. They're really good. I was working with Alton last week. He saw them live.
Oh, okay.
And he said they were great. They had this really kind of, good following, and he'll tell you about it when we talk to him. But he was like, yeah, they're really dialed in, and I read that they on stage come across as very weird. Like they have like their great presence, but they're just like very unique, weird kind of thing that you have to kind of get into.
Yeah.
But there's something about those kind of, I don't know, those bands that kind of take a different approach when they work, that I've always really liked. I can never stand like the formula band. You know what I mean? Like we've all
Right.
been part of those gigs where you had to like follow a certain prescriptive kind of thing when you're playing. I always like those bands. Like, you know what? We're just going to do whatever we want. Here we are. Here's our sound.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, getting into bands, that's one of the things that I've toyed with over the years, and I'm on that line of, there are times when it needs to be completely organic, but then you start getting into the jam band type of thing, and then there are the times when it needs to be, rehearsed and done, and this is how we played it, and this is the bend that I do, and this is the solo that I do. There's a very fine line between that, and I've played with enough bands over the years that some band members love that kind of approach, and some members don't like that approach, depending on which way you go.
Yeah, I hate the jam band thing. Can't do it. Playing in a jam band is like when I was like playing baseball. You know, people were like looking at me like, Scott, you can take a solo. What do I do? I'm not planned. I didn't rehearse this thing.
See, I'm the opposite of you two.
Are you really?
I think it really depends on what you listen to. I mean, I love listening to I like going to see live jam bands more than I like listening to live albums from jam bands. I mean,
Right.
I listen to Sirius XM's Jam On more than, it's like that and the jazz station are like my two that I listen to the most. But I think it's what Aaron's saying. Like, it depends on who you're playing for and where. Like, if you're going to play for certain, people who aren't into jam band music, they're like at a bar, maybe jamming for taking a 10-minute solo isn't the thing to do. But like at a festival or a place where people came to see you and they're like, it depends on what's going on. Like having longer jams lets people just kind of hang out and enjoy the atmosphere surrounding it.
No, I agree. I think that a festival lends itself well to that kind of thing. People were there to just kind of chill. A bar, maybe a little bit different. An actual show, maybe a little bit different, like a theater or something like that. Yeah, I agree that the venue will dictate a lot of what the listener is expecting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I know that recently that I was in a band that there was a formula where it was kind of organic. But then I know that there were certain members that felt like when I went into my solo that I had constructed my solo. I know that it was my solo. And I went and did that solo every time because, well, I spent a lot of time doing that solo and figuring out where it goes harmonically and melodically. And just, I took a lot of time and pride in doing that. I know one member hated that. Certain people who can jive with that, and then there are certain people
Right.
who can't. I mean, and you go through that through band. So yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends on the players in the band, and it depends on the venue.
Yeah, I was hard to get along with in bands. I don't know why. I think it was one of the things where, okay, well, first I was raised by musicians, and I don't mean that kind of like in this kind of literal way, but when I was a kid, all my teachers were in bands, and I really got to see that process. So in those days, like we're talking like 86, 87, okay, when the shred hair glam rock thing was really at the forefront of the music industry. And my teachers, like in their late 20s, and they're like really trying to get record deals. It was almost like watching an Olympic swim team practice. I mean, I used to sit in those rehearsals and watch those guys, and like, dudes, they would have like vocal practices. Like they would do that. They would say, all right, today we're just doing vocal rehearsals. And the three of them would sit in front of the mics, the four of them, and they would rehearse the vocals. Then one day do a sectional rhythm practice, Then one day they would do sort of, I don't know, working on different aspects of the band. My point is that they were so dialed in that when they went to stage, it was polished. So for me, I always got that rehearsal thing. So when I got into, playing in bands later, I was like, okay, like I get the organic tendency. I understand that now. In my 40s, I'm like, yeah, let things breathe and relax. But when I was a kid, I was like, okay, no, if we have not prepared adequately, like those Shakespearean actors, I'm appalled. We're not preparing. This is crazy,
Right.
But so you're right. I think there's always about what you want, kind of balancing some things out, And I think there's a lot to be said for preparation, even still.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I think one of the things that sticks in my craw, if I had to get into a band later, and probably when my kids are a little older, I might do a band thing. But one of the things that I really think is important is, you can't just go to a band rehearsal and not have things prepared. I mean, how many times have you guys been in that situation? Right? Maybe this is opening Pandora's box. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Those members.
Yeah. It's like, what do you mean you didn't practice your stuff? I've been practicing for a month on these pieces, So I went the other extreme. I was over prepared, in a lot of ways. But who knows? Maybe that was okay too.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to again, it's that line. I've always felt it's extremely important to come prepared to session always.
Agreed.
I cannot personally stand sitting around waiting for somebody to learn their part, or for us as a band to try to teach that one person.
Yeah, they practice at the rehearsal, right?
It drives me absolutely nuts.
Nuts.
And most often the times, those people don't even know it's happening. And that's the frustrating part, is the other guys in the band can look at each other and going, do you believe this? And that one guy's like, you believe this? And you're like, you're the person we're talking about.
That's true.
And it happens a lot.
Yeah.
I come from this field of being prepared is extremely important. And I teach that in my classes all the time, that, if let's just say it's an original band, and someone brings a perfect example of this is when Joe had brought a song to one of our sessions, our Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought an idea, and we had actually, it was at towards the end of session, and it was kind of like, okay, our homework is this. We need to work on this. That way, when we come back next week, we can progress. There's something that we can actually move forward with, rather than coming back next week and saying, okay, let's pick up where we left off last week and kind of just noodle around for the next 2 hours. That to me doesn't sit well. So what I did was I went home and I wrote multiple parts, and then when I show up, I have things to offer. They could be shot down, that's fine, but at least I will feel better knowing that I've done work and I have something to present. That produces, this forward movement rather than not. And that stagnation, the sitting on no ideas, or let's just figure it out now, that is to me a waste of the time that I have with my fellow musicians.
Yeah, you're right.
That's important time to me, when for 2 hours a week or whatever it is, that I make the most out of that music, whether it's original music or cover music.
Well, here's one of I think the core problems with this, the band thing. And okay, so call it what it is, right? And for our audiences, especially the young ones who might be listening to this from band, here's the wisdom I was taught by my teachers years ago. Okay. Being in a band is like being married to 5 guys, like being in a relationship with 5 other people, the dynamics that you have to deal with. Okay. From like, this person is putting all his time in, this person is not, right? Yeah. This person wants to do this style, this person does not. It conflicts with your creative vision, that person's creative vision. Like, talk about democracy. Like you have to learn. I think it's more about people skill and trying to, what they call that, de-escalation of, when you're in crisis mode, and, trying to make people happy, and, trying to be, diplomatic.
Just
right?
Brings out so many memories.
Yeah, right. I know. And that's the problem. I think, like, when you're young and you're like, oh, I just want to do this and go this direction. It's hard to sacrifice. It's hard to or compromise what you want to do. I don't know if I'd have an easier time now, but maybe. But yeah, it's definitely, it's an interesting dynamic. So guys who want to start bands today, know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
It's not just saying it.
It's always interesting, because I've always been, pro music and pro playing in a band all my life. But it's interesting when you come across somebody who might actually have more enthusiasm than you do. That's always an interesting one to come across as well, because I'm very in it, very all the time. And then when I come across somebody who's in a band who's like
more so,
more enthusiastic. You're kind of blown away, and you almost say to yourself, "Whoa, buddy."
Is it that, or are you ever getting competition with those guys? Because I used to find that too. It's like, okay, we're gonna like piss on our territory here. We're gonna see who's like, who's got more kind of the enthusiasm. But yeah, it's right. I think sometimes it goes over the top.
Yeah. You have to be kind of careful of how that kind of plays out. Again, you have to know how to de-escalate certain situations and kind of manipulate them and work with people and know how to, take one for the team. That's extremely important to be able to just kind of say, okay, it's cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit back today and I'll be okay with this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of time I have a lot of memories of being in a moderator role, like watching two people get into it in the band, then you jump in and you're trying to like be the arbitrator, and because it's like, okay, if you're thinking about the gig that's coming up and you're like, we cannot be fighting right now, like we got to fix this, whatever, trying to give concessions to each side. But you also have to look at the members. Like I have memories of getting along with members musically and then having lifestyle issues, whether that was, drinking and whatever that was going on during practices.
Oh yeah.
Like that influenced things, even though it might be like awesome playing music with them, that can get in the way. Or I have very specific memories of people who had, conflicts with their personal life and adjusting that, fitting that with the band schedule. And I remember feeling like this guy needing to go on a date with his girlfriend was literally affecting my band schedule all the time. It was like me versus his girlfriend is what I felt like, which created an incredible amount of tension, which then seeps into the, the actual music playing. So yeah, you gotta, and then you gotta look at people's commitment to the band. I have a problem. I used to get overextended in bands, which, I mean, Aaron's seen this, which can then interfere with your level of preparedness. If you're in too many bands at once, you just can't be as prepared for all of them.
Overextended in the sense of taking on too many projects. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's something, at least in the DC area, I felt like there's so much, once you got into it, there's so much organic, like mixing and blending of bands. I mean, I had my drummer for one band was the rhythm guitarist and singer in another band. And my bass player in one band was also the bass player in another band. Like, because we pulled him in when our other bass player left. I was like, oh, I got the guy. And just like everyone would end up in these projects and sitting in with other people. And then you're like, oh man, I need to learn this part for this band. And then I got this rehearsal and I got school and everything else. And there's not enough time to focus on what you need to do.
Right. Depending on what's going on in your life, I'd say anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 bands is 2 is great. You can juggle that pretty easily. 3 starts getting a little hairy. 4 is like, oh man, you better have your schedule together.
Well, at that point, how do you even like keep track of learning material and scheduling rehearsals? And
right. Yeah, that gets a little bit crazy.
I've always respected the guys who, and I firmly believe in having equal say. I firmly believe in that. But it seems to me, unless you're like Rush and those guys, that they form these amazing friendships. That's another thing. I think forming friendships with your bandmates is like integral for success, being really close to those guys. But, unless you're in a 3-piece or something where, you really understand how, one another, how you tick and can kind of anticipate things. I think it's kind of important also for one person or 2 people to kind of take a leadership role in a band, to kind of like be the person that's going to captain the ship when it kind of falls apart.
Oh my gosh. It's always important that someone in any situation, be it band or not, there has to be a leader. There has to be someone who takes control, and everybody on a team, no matter what that team is, always is looking for someone to give direction. That's extremely important.
I feel like if the band somebody's going to do it. Whoever cares the most about keeping the band going, somebody's going to step up when it looks like it's going to fall apart.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the band should fall apart if nobody cares enough to
Or evolve.
right the ship. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times too, people just jump in saying the idea of being in a band is so, glamorizing that you're like, okay, I'm going to jump in this thing. It's going to be amazing. We're going to get record deals or whatever. And then the work comes and you're like, or at least a few of them are like, I don't want this. And what tends to happen, it falls to pieces. This is why you have to have a nucleus where, people will fall off the fringes and then you replace them with other band members. So I think it's like, in a lot of ways what we're doing too. Like you have this kind of core of a project, and then that core, how many guys that is, remains the same, and you kind of keep evolving and moving forward. And that seems to be I think the successful formula for bands, at least my experience.
Yeah, there comes a point where especially when you're younger, I know this has come up a couple times in a couple bands that I've been in, where you have to kind of establish how you're approaching the band as a whole, in terms of, are we doing this as a hobby or are we doing this as a profession?
Right.
And then there will be a line where if you are doing it as a hobby, that and you decide to then take it over into the professional or make some money with it, that can get a little bit sticky as well, because some of the members may not look at it as others do. I want to start looking at this as a potential of making some money, and maybe another band member's like, you know what?
Just like think for me to do on the weekends or whatever.
Right. It's just I don't want to practice, so I'm just gonna keep on doing my thing, and that can be a point of contention. I mean, that's just people will get mad.
Yeah, I think it's why in a lot of ways I think 90% of my playing career was always solo. It's for that reason, So I'm not sure how much wisdom I have with the, like being in lots of different groups. But I'll tell you, the ones I were in, excuse me, the ones where I think they were the most successful for me were the bands where it was professionally done. Like every member had a professional stake in what we were doing. It was almost like the dedication, the understanding was it's a job. It's not just a hobby. It's something we're going to do, and we're going to do professionally. And like when I was in Big Bang, those guys are just like dialed in the whole time. They lived music. That was the thing that was important.
Yeah, I agree. As the older I got and I started to learn my lesson more and more, playing with people who have the equal passion that you do is extremely important. You don't want to come across that situation where someone isn't as passionate as you are and then go through that whole, it's a recipe for disaster, because you either have to end up approaching that person or just plain old kicking them out. And that's a terrible situation.
I have those conversations, right?
Oh my gosh.
That's stressful.
Yeah.
It is stressful.
And we all have to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to go to you have to have the balls to be able to go up to a member and say, hey, look, we need you to step up your game, or it's not happening. And then if they don't step up the game, then you have to come back at them again and be like, hey, this is it. Or maybe it's an attitude thing. Maybe somebody has a completely terrible, I know of a band that their drummer was phenomenal, but his attitude was terrible. He just had a terrible attitude. So they ended up trying to kick him out and replace him. So there's many different things.
Kicking somebody out when they feel like they were a part of one of the founders of a band and they've written some of the material also makes things extra complicated and difficult.
Yeah, and there's a precedent in history, not only like personally, but like historically speaking. How many bands do we know of where that has happened, where the originator of the group was ousted for whatever reason?
Yep. I've done that. I created a band. That was one of my very first bands. I created the band. I went through the whole process of putting out ads and actually recruiting all the people. And in the end,
they booted you.
They booted me. They showed up at my door with my amp. They didn't even actually go through the process of kicking me out. They just rolled my 5150 to my door and were like, yeah. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea.
You recruited the wrong people.
I think it came down to I didn't fit in their clique. I was a different person than they were, and they didn't like that. I don't know why. I have no idea why. But it is what it is. I mean, that was a long time ago. It was just an interesting thing being in that situation because I had no idea. I literally had been calling for the past like 3 weeks, like, when's band practice? Because I want to play. Like, I miss playing. Why aren't we playing? Why aren't we playing? They just showed up and I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense. Okay. I was obviously very, very pissed. And I never really got an answer. But to my knowledge, that's the only reason, because I got along with everybody. And it wasn't like I wasn't in it. It was just more along the lines of I don't think that I fit in their clique because they were all kind of friends.
It's a relationship times 5. This is like giving you your ring back,
right?
No explanation. Bye.
Right.
So where's the closure?
Yeah.
You know, for kids and I think kids who are starting bands, they have to learn. And well, actually, all of them. I think all musicians have to kind of understand this too. And something it took me a long time to realize is that when you're actually in a group of like 5 members or 6 members or whatever it is, what you do, your actions, what you say, has effect on everybody in that band. So I found that the ones who kind of like are in the fringes of the group and kind of fall away and all the stuff we're talking about are those ones that are really self-absorbed. You know what I'm talking about? Like they just care about my immediate gratification in this group, what I'm getting, what I want to do, how I have to practice or how if I don't practice, not realizing that everybody feeds off that. But the ones that are on the flip side, you know, are like that stick with it and are passionate and successful, are understanding that, okay, if I say this thing right now or do this action or whatever, it has an effect on my band brothers. And I have to, you know, understand that to make the best choice, you know, and that goes for any kind of group dynamic, not just in musical band practice. And I think the sooner people get to the point where it's like, this is literally a social people skill, you know, then I think it just becomes a smoother ship.
Yeah. Dealing with other people's ideas, musical ideas, you know, if you say like the power of saying, I don't like that, like compared to saying like, I like that, but maybe you could change it a little bit like that. Like, it's incredible what it can do to the difference. Like I've brought an idea to the table and somebody said just like, I don't like that. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't like that? Like this is the thing I've been working on all week. Like you just don't like it. What part don't you like about it? Do you not like the rhythm of it or the melody or just the general vibe of it? Can you give me some direction?
I just don't like it. I just don't like how it sounds.
Yeah, which kind of like it's just like a shutdown comment. So it's just kind of like, okay, like it makes you not want to ever bring anything to the table again.
Right.
You know, and so had that person been more of a, yeah, I appreciate that you put in all this work. And I really like this about the riff. Maybe we could speed it up because I think it's a little slow or something. Like maybe we could change the chords underneath. There's a lot, like being helpful in your feedback is, you know, it goes back to the people skills. You got to keep everybody happy so everybody feels comfortable bringing ideas to the table and
some people
working together and collaborating.
Some people just don't have that in them. I know that I've worked with certain people that just their people skills are just terrible. You know, it's the way that they communicate is they don't think about it. They just kind of blurt it out and you're like, yeah. And now we have to go through this whole lesson of saying, could you not do it like that? Could you actually be a little more constructive in your criticism? Like I'm open to ideas, but how you come across is a bit of a jackass. And now you're making me look like a jackass because I have to tell you. And that's a whole, there are people out there just have terrible communication skills.
Well, that's just it. It's like, it's just in any kind of dynamic communicating effectively, you know, if you're going to like harbor a grudge and not say anything. How many times we've been in that experience where it's like something has made another band member upset and they don't tell you. They're just sitting there like all pissed for like the length of the band rehearsal, and it kind of creates this vibe, you know, and then they tell you like a week down the road, you know, that really made me upset that we did this. Okay, well, why don't you bring it up then? We could have squashed it and just moved on.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of thing. I think we see too.
You know, another interesting experience I've had is we were recruiting a we thought we'd expand our 3-piece into a 4-piece at one point, and we pulled this keyboard player into the band for a period. And at first he didn't know our songs, so we were trying to teach him, and which was fine. We knew that was part of the process. But once I remember getting to maybe our second gig with this guy, he starts trying to add all these interesting tensions. Like, instead of playing the chords like we had shown him, he was adding not only sevenths but ninths and 11ths and stuff, and it was like completely changing the vibe of the song. And so sometimes I've experienced someone who went too far and then didn't want to listen when we were like, you know what, that chord doesn't really fit right here. Like, it's interesting, but you're like changing the whole thing, and you're messing up the vocals that are singing with it. And so, yeah, I guess the guy was selfish about wanting to be like super fancy when it didn't necessarily fit.
Right. You guys were more of a raw type of thing rather than kind of.
Yeah, I mean, we were playing like a rock song, and maybe we were playing a power chord section, and
Right.
it's like, whoa, dude. I appreciate your attempts here, but then differences of musical opinion. He had to go.
Times that by 10. You guys ever have the experience where it's like you have an understanding, disagreement about how the music's going to go in rehearsals, then you get to the gig, and the one guy wants to show off in front of the audience and like completely makes a jackass out of himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love those too. It's like, really? What?
Yeah.
I mean, and then you get into band situations where people want to turn up too much.
Oh,
You
yeah.
need to be
need to be heard.
I need to be louder. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah. That I mean, that's a whole nother. We've talked about that in an episode quite a while ago. Is you guys have to always be mindful of the band as a unit and how you guys come across to the audience. Sometimes people just have this, it's the me show, and that's really irritating within a band environment where you're sitting there and you're going, what are you doing? Like, stop. This is us together. I mean, it's definitely important that when you go up on stage that you guys check your volumes and have someone go out in the audience, and maybe it's you yourself, and maybe it's you do a rotation and you kind of go through this process of saying, okay, play as a band, play a couple bars, and just kind of listen to how we sound to an audience member and go through that process. That's part of being in a band. You don't just get up on the band. Ooh, this brings up another idea. Sorry. But you don't just.
That was part of your dialogue.
So you don't just kind of jump up on stage and just kind of just start doing your own thing and somehow it comes together. That's not how you approach it. And then the idea that I thought of is there's been so many times where I've witnessed in my own band and in other people's bands where, let's just say, a bassist or a guitarist, specifically, maybe a keyboardist, where they're only thinking about themselves. So they come in, they set up their amp, they plug in their guitar, they tune, and they're done. They're off to the bar.
Oh, yeah. A lot.
For a drummer, that's extremely frustrating.
Yes. Okay.
That's extremely frustrating because he's got lots of hardware. And the same thing for the end of the night, breaking down.
I used to help John set up and break down every gig.
Help your members out 100%. If they need something and I'm done, I'm on it. It doesn't matter. There was one gig where we played downtown, and we realized at the last second that we had no way for us to get electricity from here to there. So I had to run to a local, whatever convenience store and buy a 6-foot extension cable. You have to be, again, it's this vision of how do we get ourselves to be the best we can be. That way the audience wants us back or the venue wants us back. We don't want to look, like this is our first gig. No,
it's professional.
Absolutely. So absolutely 100% make sure that you are in touch with your brothers, with your family of the band. You guys have to work as a unit. But I've seen that so many times where, the guy's off at the bar and someone's still setting up, and that's just like
it's a lack of awareness. This goes back to what we're saying here. If you're thinking like, this is a me self egocentric thing, then it's never going to work. That person's never going to kind of fit. All this stuff is great. I'll tell you what's really the hardest conversation to have ever for me in a band is when you're playing with the guys for let's say a number of months or something, and you realize that one of them is not going to get any better, that there are problems in their musicianship that are making the band suffer in terms of the movement forward. And you realize that as awesome as they are at being like, just tight with you guys and dedicated and practicing, musically speaking, they're just not going to get any better. That's a really difficult conversation because, you have to at that point say, all right, if I replace this person, as much as I don't want to, the band moves forward. And if I keep them in the band, we're kind of stagnating. Those are always really hard conversations for me to have. And I'm guilty. Sometimes I would just be like, you know what? I can't do it. I can't cut them loose. I can't. We're too close, But it's one of those things where you have to say, for the good of the band, what do we need? Right? How many times have you been playing with people where their rhythm has been off, or they've worked on timing and they can't feel pocket. They can't do it no matter how much they play, So yeah, it's not a very easy thing to be in this environment of working with all these guys. And you hope it never gets to that point, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
It goes back to whether this is a hobby band or a professional money-making band.
Right.
Well, me personally, I never saw the point of hobby bands, but that was me. Like if I was going to devote my time to practicing and learning, rehearsing and learning material, and you guys know this. I mean, to get good, you got to rehearse a few nights a week.
Yeah.
You have to, and some of the bands we were in, we do 3-4 nights a week.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So
that's normal.
Yeah, it's normal. For me, that's not hobby. That's on your track to doing something.
Yeah.
Or otherwise, what's the point?
I think you have to be in a hobby band to get to the point where you can be in a professional band, though. Everybody's got
like training wheels.
Yeah,
sure.
Your high school rock band that gets you excited about, devoting yourself to your instrument.
Well, I'll tell you, speaking of like real high school-ish stuff, I finally listened to Greta Van Fleet a couple of days ago. I really like him. I mean, listen, that singer, Josh, sounds just like Plant.
Yeah.
In fact, I watched an interview where Plant quoted, or at least addressed him and said that, because they asked him like what he thought of those guys. And he said, they're Zeppelin 1. They were basically like Zeppelin in the early days. What they have going for them is the fact that most of them are brothers.
Right.
Right. The three of them are brothers. I think was it the drummer is not related to them or something? I don't really remember. But you can get the sense that even though they're like, just emerging from high school into, where they're 18 or 19 right now, that they have a dedication, an understanding that this is going to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lifestyle choice.
Yeah. Yeah, they're on that cusp of actually identifying themselves as a band. I mean, it's great. It's great.
Yeah. It's really refreshing to kind of see that, and to see the fact that actually the music industry is putting their ears to that kind of thing. Because I felt that, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but the last 20 years has been, people saying, all right, here's what you guys need to have. Here's your little formula to put together, and let's fill in the gaps with what we need, and let's brand it, publish it, and throw it out there. Let's make millions off it.
Yeah.
It's like the Disney Channel musicians.
Right.
The Hannah Montanas and the whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not really enjoying the way music is going today. Even like with like Taylor Swift. I'm when Taylor first started off, she wasn't bad. She actually had a real band, real instruments. She played an instrument. I had respect for her. Now I have no respect for her.
I think that was Taylor who just texted you.
It is. She's like,
you guys have no understanding of how music works.
We're gonna be in our next song. She's gonna put us down.
No, I just don't. I props to the producers out there that are putting together these beats and samples and all that kind of stuff, and all these people who are buying this crap.
Ooh, I love Today.
I just don't enjoy it.
I love Today.
I don't enjoy what's being put out on the radio and how it's being consumed at all. If you take me back 40 years, 50 years, that's when music really was music to me. When the band worked together as a unit and there was no synths or anything like that. It wasn't sampled, it wasn't loops. It was an actual band that actually played. That's how I view music as music. That's what I
Well,
love.
something you said, Aaron,
Mm.
many years ago, I remember you said this, and it always stuck in my brain, is that 40, 50 years ago, people were actually listening at shows.
My gosh,
Sitting,
yes.
listening to the band and taking it as a type of experience. Now it's not that. I think now it's just more of like an entertainment thing, which we all know how I feel about that. But it's, I think you have this tide that has moved to, people are not committing, I don't think, to sitting down and paying attention to what the band is doing. I think there's always a focus on the singer or their favorite star of the show, and it's become more of that kind of.
In my opinion, what happened was video killed the radio star. As soon as MTV came out, image played a huge role and actually overtook everything. Not that image didn't play a role beforehand, but it was more about the music. You had, even if you look at old videos of, let's say, Zeppelin or whatnot like that, you actually see the crowd sitting around, usually sitting like on the floor, or if it's an actual venue, in their chairs. But they're actually listening and engaging in the music that's going on. If you go to a concert back then, you would actually just be sitting there listening. Or if you had an album, you would lay down on the floor and put the headphones on and just kind of listen to the album from front to back.
Right.
That's what you did. That was the
correct.
norm. That was the norm. Now, most artists sell singles. They release singles. You can buy, the song for 99 cents off of the album. Album sales are way down. It just is not. You go to a concert and people are holding their phones up, and it's this kind of social thing rather than actually being engaged with the band.
Yeah, right. I agree.
It's a completely different thing. Now, again, you're going to have your things where that still happens. Go to festivals or whatnot like that, but the environment of how we consume music has completely changed, and I don't think I like that.
I've got to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
I love this. Come on, bring it.
Extremely dependent on the venue and even the town. Like, I'm in Virginia Beach now, and the original music scene here is not anything what it was up in the DC area. And I've not gotten as much into the Norfolk scene, but I've heard that there's more original music going on there. But, up in DC, there were the bars that had only cover bands and they played top 40 kind of stuff. And yes, it was a complete social scene. But then there were all these cool venues like Iota Club in Arlington, which is sadly gone just recently. Iota would have a sound guy, and you paid your cover to come in to see the bands, and everybody's watching you on stage. I mean, there were a bunch of places, like the Velvet Lounge in DC was really cool. It had the upstairs.
What a great name. What a great name.
Black Cat.
Yep. Well, Black Cat, the back room at Black Cat, I've played that a couple times. That's the upstairs is huge. That's where Foo Fighters played recently. But I mean, there's all these venues where you got a sound guy and people are coming in to watch you play, and it is what you're talking about. But if you try to go to the hopping bar on the corner where everybody's just there to drink, everybody just wants to hear Bruno Mars and whatever.
Yeah, I think people are still keeping it alive. I mean, I like everything we're talking about. I think there's a certain culture of listeners who are going to try to get the musical experience in a live setting, which is I think why live shows are so popular nowadays.
Yeah.
We still kind of have that thing going on. But like, Aaron was talking about, I have a friend of mine who saw Hendrix play, and he told me this. He says, it's a different thing. When you watch Jimmy play back then, like people were, like Aaron said, they were on the floor, like watching and listening and absorbing, and like following everything and being kind of taken, by just the movement of the music.
It's because they were on acid.
True. Well, hey, we're not trying to advocate anything on this show, but hey,
and they also had never, like, nobody quite like Jimmy had existed.
That's true. That's true.
No,
it was breaking down boundaries back then.
Yeah.
And you weren't like, it's not like you could go on YouTube and be like, awesome guitar solo and pull up like thousands of different like amazing guitar solos. True. Now there's like, it's so easy. I have my nice microphone and my little audio interface. I can sit down and record songs in my house. So everybody's putting out music.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much good music out there if you know it. And that's why I love the local scene. Like I literally have like lots of local bands albums and there I listen to that stuff as opposed to listening to FM radio. So if you like seek out the good stuff, if you go to, I've said this before, just look up who's playing at Bonnaroo, ignore the top couple lines and go down deeper into the lineup. There's like 100 bands playing at Bonnaroo each year, or Firefly or Lollapalooza, whatever. You Lock-in's a great one. It's got not gotten big. The point is that if you seek out the good music and you're not going to hear it on FM radio. It's out there right now. I feel like is one of the greatest times that there's ever been. It's just not going to be on mainstream radio.
Yeah. It's always a double-edged sword. I feel that way strongly. It's like, we have so much accessibility to great bands now, and it's even in the underground scene. I mean, that's what I'm listening to a lot, to like really the underground players right now and seeing what they're doing and kind of coming up and being kind of into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, even jazz is, it's not what it was. I mean, it's not like a mainstream thing now, but you look, there's bands like Snarky Puppy that are just like,
that's a band name?
Awesome. You've never heard Snarky Puppy?
No, I'm jealous.
Snarky Puppy? Wow.
No.
They are awesome.
Why do I feel like you guys are ganging up on me for not listening to this band?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Snarky Puppy.
You should check them out. They do a lot of like,
no, I've never heard of them.
They've got horn section and they kind of mix a lot of funk and jazz, and I mean they're always bringing on guests. They've got like full on productions on their YouTube videos.
All right.
It's really cool music. So, these things are out there. You just have to find them.
Not to kind of pull the conversation back to best practices with a band, but the one thing I would feel I would do a disservice if I never got this out was this. Please, people, fret buzzards. If you guys are going to be in a band, you hook up with other members of your team. When you get to practice, make sure your instrument's tuned. Please.
Fret buzzards. I mean, I like that.
Yeah.
Don't you love it? It's great.
Buzzards. Yeah.
Buzzards.
Yeah. No, I that happens here. And the other thing is that if you're going to tune, oftentimes tuners are not calibrated the same. So try to tune with the same tuner. Pass it around, especially at a show. I mean, yeah, they're always going to be close, but nonetheless, if you want to be perfect, use the same tuner.
Use your ears.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey man, play your E.
Yeah. And the other thing that since we are coming to the end of the show, do what you want. Obviously, all you buzzards out there. But we've brought it up a couple times during the show, is drugs and alcohol. My personal experience,
not a good mix.
It's not a good mix. Either rehearsal or live shows.
Yeah.
Everything in moderation, obviously. And I'm not going to say yay or nay to either or. But personally, for me, I know that if I have more than 1 to 2 drinks, I'm done. I just, I don't perform the way that I should. I know there are people that out there who get completely trashed. Good for you. You won't be in my band, that's for sure. Even 2 drinks, I'm like, okay, I try to tend to, maybe I'll have 2 drinks the entire gig. I'll have a beer for the beginning of just kind of loosen the nerves up a little bit like that. And maybe I'll have a beer throughout the first set or something like that. I try not to drink any more than that because by third set, I'm trashed, and you don't gain the respect out of the crowd the way, I don't know, because then I think of like Suicidal Tendencies and all these other guys, Metallica.
I think
for the most part, it depends on what kind of band you are, obviously. But you don't see like Pat Metheny or any of these other guys getting completely trashed. And again, it depends on what kind of band you are. If you're a rock band or you're a metal band, sure, I'm sure there's a little bit of that's allowed. But
it's a professionalism thing, man. I mean, that's all it really comes down to. I think if you put on the air that you're ultra professional, the crowd responds, your audiences respond, your fans respond. If you're just going to act like an ass, and like, I remember playing a gig one time with a bass player, and we played the show. I can't remember the name of it, but he got so wrecked, during the gig. By the second set, like maybe the end of the second to third set, we were holding him up.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. And the other guitar player said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And that was it. We were done with him. Mm-hmm. Why does it have to, everything we put in, all the rehearsal hours were decimated in that one night, And so I think it really has to be an understanding that, professionalism is the thing that kind of carries you guys forward, or it's not going to, even if you have marginal success, at some point you're going to peter out for stuff like that, So, and then it doesn't just go for like the whole drug alcohol thing. It goes for anything coming into the band dynamic. If you break the level of professionalism, it's just never going to work.
Yeah, I know for me with alcohol specifically, it has ruined many situations, live and especially rehearsal. There's nothing worse than trying to explain something to one of your band members when he's completely wasted. And you're like, this is a lost cause. Yeah. Again, it comes back to that. You're wasting my time, and I want to make the most out of the time that I have with this band. I'm not getting together to just drink with the guys.
Yeah, well, that's exactly, there it is, right? So it goes back to what the expectations are socially. Mm-hmm. If we have to understand that we're here to work, maybe it takes meetings. How many times you guys have been on band meetings? I used to do them all the time.
Yeah.
Let's call a meeting today. Let's just kind of talk about what the agenda is. And you can always tell from those too, like who's going to be on board with you, who's not, based on the feel you get from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was Taylor who just texted you.
It is. She's like,
you guys have no understanding of how music works.
We're going to be in our next song.
I'm your Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Have a good week. We'll be in touch soon. All right. Later. Bye. Where's my damn button?
Isn't that awkward when you say bye and then you're like,
okay, yeah, I try to keep this like, professional and like, okay, bye guys, let's cut it. And like, damn it, where's this button at?
All you buzzards out there.